The smell of his cedar and bergamot cologne still hung in the entryway when my husband kissed my cheek, grabbed his carry-on, and told me he'd be back from Calgary in 4 days. He double-checked the deadbolt on the front door from the outside, and I heard the click of the padlock he'd installed on the gate last winter, the one he said was for security. I stood at the kitchen window and watched his black F-150 back out of the driveway and disappear around the corner. That was when my stepdaughter spoke. Not signed, that top it on her tablet. Spoke. He's going to kill us. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense without knowing who Cleo is. My husband. I'll call him my husband throughout this, because saying his name still makes my throat close. Brought Cleo into our marriage when she was 6 years old. Her mother had died of an aneurysm the year before, sudden and brutal and without any warning at all, and Cleo had been there in the apartment when it happened. The doctors said the trauma had caused selective mutism. She hadn't spoken a single word since she was 5. She communicated through an AAC tablet, a device that spoke for her when she pressed pictogram buttons, and through sign language she taught herself from YouTube videos and through the most expressive brown eyes I had ever seen on a child. She was 9 when I met her. She was 11 when I married her father at a small ceremony at a vineyard in Niagara-on-the-Lake. She was 13 now, rail thin, serious in the way that kids who've survived real grief are serious. And she was the reason I had said yes to this whole complicated, exhausting, beautiful life. I want to be honest, marrying into this situation was not easy. My husband traveled constantly for work. He was a senior project manager for an infrastructure firm, long stints in Calgary, Edmonton, sometimes as far as Vancouver, and when he was gone, the full weight of Cleo's care fell on me. Speech therapy appointments twice a week in Mississauga, school advocacy meetings because her teachers didn't always understand AAC communication, coordinating with the child psychologist, Dr. Okafor, every other Thursday. I was 31 years old, and I had become, in every practical sense, the primary parent of a child I had not given birth to. I did not resent it. I want to be clear about that too. I loved Cleo in the way you love something you chose, which is sometimes fiercer than the love you're born into. But my husband, I had started to notice things. Small things at first. The way he flinched when I mentioned the joint account. The life insurance policy he'd had me sign my name to 14 months ago. The one I'd assumed was standard. The phone calls he took in the garage with the door pulled down. The way he'd started referring to Cleo in a certain distant tone, like she was a logistical problem rather than his daughter. I had filed all of these things somewhere in the back of my mind and tried not to look directly at them. Then his truck disappeared around the corner and Cleo spoke, and I couldn't look away anymore. I spun around so fast I knocked my coffee mug off the counter. It shattered on the tile and I didn't even look down at it. I was staring at Cleo, who was standing in the kitchen doorway in her oversized Toronto Maple Leafs hoodie, holding her tablet at her side, not using it. Her lips had moved. Sound had come out. "What did you say?" My voice came out as a whisper. She swallowed. It looked like it cost her something. "He's going to kill us." Her voice was rough, barely above a breath, like a muscle that hadn't been used in 8 years. But it was there. It was real. I crossed the kitchen in 4 steps and crouched down in front of her. "Cleo, look at me." "What do you mean?" She held out her tablet. On the screen, she'd preloaded a long sequence of text, not the pictograms but the keyboard function, typed out carefully, probably over hours or days. I stood up and read it with my hand shaking. "Dad has a girlfriend. Her name is Lori." I found texts on his old phone, the one he left in his desk drawer. They've been together for almost 2 years. She has a house in Barrie. I looked her up. She's real. She's on Facebook. Dad told her he can't leave us because of the life insurance payout timing. He told her he needed to wait until after the policy matured. Mom. I know you're not my mom, but you're the only one I have. I didn't know how to tell you. I've been watching him for 6 months. Last week he turned off the carbon monoxide detector in the basement and told you the battery was dead. He bought a new battery 2 days ago. He didn't install it. I had to read it twice before my brain would accept what it was showing me. The carbon monoxide detector? I thought about the headaches I've been getting in the mornings. The ones I blamed on stress, on the dry winter air, on not sleeping well. The low-grade nausea after breakfast. I had made a doctor's appointment for next Tuesday. I had told myself I was probably just run down. How long has the detector been off? I asked. Cleo held up 6 fingers. 6 days. I grabbed her hand and we went upstairs. The thing about growing up in a small town in northern Ontario is that you learn to be practical in emergencies. My mother was not a warm woman, but she was a prepared one. She kept a first aid kit in every room, road flares in every vehicle, and a battery-powered carbon monoxide detector as a backup in the hall closet because, she said, you don't trust anything that runs on house power when the house itself might be the problem. I had not thought about that closet in 3 years. It was still there. A small white detector, sealed in its original packaging, with a 9-volt battery taped to the back. My mother had given it to me when I moved in with my husband, tucked inside a box of other household things, dish towels, a can opener, practical love in the shape of objects. I tore the packaging open. I installed the battery. The green light blinked on. Within 40 seconds, the alarm screamed. I grabbed Cleo, and we went out through the back door and into the yard. The February air hit us like a wall. I hadn't stopped to get our coats. I had my phone and Cleo had her tablet, and that was everything. I called 911 and I told the dispatcher exactly what was happening, and she kept me on the line while she redirected the call to Peel Regentural. 2 fire trucks and a paramedic unit arrived in 11 minutes. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand, we called. We did the thing that every reasonable person would do. I know that in stories like this, people make inexplicable choices, run toward danger instead of away from it, and the audience sits there wondering why. I want you to know I was terrified and cold, and my legs were shaking, and I called 911 from my backyard and waited on the lawn with my stepdaughter pressed against my side. The firefighters confirmed a carbon monoxide leak from the furnace. It wasn't accidental deterioration. Someone had partially disconnected a fitting in the exhaust flue, the kind of modification that would look like wear and tear to anyone who didn't know what to look for, but would slowly push CO back into the living space instead of out through the roof. The fire captain used the word deliberate 3 times in the span of 2 minutes. He said we were lucky. He said another 3 or 4 days and we might not have woken up one morning. I stood on my frozen front lawn in a sweatshirt and socks, and I thought about the life insurance policy, about Lori and Barry, about my husband's truck driving away 2 hours ago with his carry-on in the back. Then I called the police. I want to tell you about Cleo's voice. While we were waiting for the police, for the all clear, for whatever was going to happen next, we sat in the back of the paramedic unit with foil blankets around our shoulders. The paramedic, a young woman with a red braid down her back, gave us hot chocolate from a thermos she kept in her kit. Cleo held the cup in both hands and looked at me. I practiced, she said quietly. The words were slow, deliberate, like she was placing them one at a time on a surface she wasn't sure would hold them. In my room, at night, I needed to be able to tell you. In case something happened fast. My throat closed. How long have you been practicing? Since October. She paused. I wanted to say it out loud, not on the tablet. I needed you to hear it. I put my arm around her and she leaned into me, and I thought about a little girl alone in her bedroom for 4 months, whispering into the dark, rehearsing words that might save our lives. The OPP and Peel Regional Police coordinated. My husband was stopped at Pearson before his flight to Calgary boarded. His phone was seized. The texts with Lori went back 22 months, and they were not ambiguous. He had used the word patient to describe his timeline. He had told her the payout was $800,000. He had told her that Cleo was, and I am quoting from what the detective later read to me, not going to be an issue. Lori was questioned. She maintained initially that she hadn't known he planned to actually do anything. The phone records told a different story. She had sent him a link to an article about carbon monoxide poisoning 4 months ago. In the text accompanying it, she had written, "Subtle and clean. No one suspects." She was charged as an accessory. The weeks after were not clean or triumphant. I want to be honest about that too, because real life does not resolve like a story. Cleo and I stayed with my sister in Hamilton while the house was assessed and cleared. Child Protective Services opened a file. There were interviews, there were lawyers, there were forms with my signature required at every turn. My husband's family, his parents, his older brother, did not believe it at first. His mother called me twice in the first week, voice messages I still haven't deleted, saying there must have been a misunderstanding, that he would never. I did not call her back. There was nothing to say. The house was a marital asset and the divorce proceedings would take a long time. My lawyer, a compact and precise woman named, I'll call her my lawyer, told me to document everything and say nothing publicly and trust the process. I did not always trust the process, but I documented everything. What helped was Cleo. She didn't go back to silence. I had expected the trauma of everything to fold her back into the mutism like a piece of paper returning to its crease. But she didn't. She kept talking, slowly, with long pauses, sometimes reverting to the tablet when she was tired or overwhelmed. But she kept talking. At her next session, Dr. Okafor cried. She told me later, privately, that in 8 years of working with selectively mute children she had seen full verbal return happen, but never quite like this. Never with this kind of agency behind it. She chose it, Dr. Okafor said. She decided speech was worth the risk again, for a specific purpose. That's remarkable. I thought about what Cleo had said in the paramedic unit. I needed you to hear it. She hadn't broken her silence for a therapist. Not for a classroom, not for a reward, not for any of the gentle, structured interventions we'd tried over the years. She had broken it for me. In a moment of real danger, she had decided that her voice was the most important tool she had, and she had used it. I don't know how to explain what that did to my understanding of her, of myself, of what we were to each other. I just know that something shifted permanently. 6 months after that February morning, a family court judge granted me temporary guardianship of Cleo, with a review scheduled for the following year. The Crown proceeded with criminal charges. My husband's preliminary hearing was set for the following spring. Cleo and I moved into a rental in Burlington, a 2-bedroom bungalow with a yard that backed onto a greenbelt, the kind of place where you can hear geese in the morning. She picked her room before I picked mine. She wanted the one with the window that faced the trees. On the first night in the new house, we ordered butter chicken from the place down the street and sat on the kitchen floor because we didn't have a table yet. Cleo had her tablet beside her, but she wasn't using it. She was just talking, telling me about a book she was reading for English class, a story about a girl who inherits a lighthouse and has to figure out how to keep it running on her own. She's good at it, Cleo said. At the lighthouse, even though no one taught her. Some people figure things out, I said. She looked at me with those serious brown eyes. Yeah, she said. I think that's true. Outside, the geese were moving over the green belt, calling to each other in the dark. I could hear them through the window Cleo had already decided was hers. We sat on the kitchen floor and ate our dinner, and the house felt, for the first time in a long time, like something that belonged to us. Not inherited, not contingent, not conditional on someone else's mercy. Just ours. Just real. She called me Mom for the first time 3 weeks later. She said it the same way she'd said everything since February. Carefully, deliberately, like she'd been holding the word in her hands and making sure it was solid before she put it down. It was solid.